Hello, guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Vijeta, and we shall be continuing with the plays of Shakespeare. Today, we shall start with Antony and Cleopatra, which was written between 1607 to 1608. And in this, Mark Antony, Octavius, and Lepidus are the triumvirs of Roman Republic, which means that the three of them actually rule over Rome. So that is why they are called the triumvirs of the Roman Republic. And Mark Antony has neglected his soldierly duty after being deceived by Egypt's queen Cleopatra. Antony ignores Rome's domestic problems, including the fact that his third wife Fulvia rebelled against Octavius and died. Octavius calls Antony back to Rome from Alexandria in order to help him fight against Sextus Pompey, Menecrates, and Menes, the three notorious pirates of the Mediterranean. You should remember the three names. Sometimes they may ask, so that is something. And yeah, I think I just repeated the slides. In Alexandria, Antony departs for Rome in spite of being stopped by Cleopatra. He has shown his deep, passionate love for her. At Rome, Antony marries Octavius's younger sister, Octavia, in order to cement the friendly relation with Octavius. Antony's lieutenant, Enobarbus, knows that Octavia can never satisfy Antony after Cleopatra. I mean, she is just a rebound in some ways, and Enobarbus knows it. And he has, he has kind of understood that. Enobarbus describes Cleopatra's charms as age cannot wither her, not custom stain her infinite variety. Other women cloy, their appetites they feed, but she makes hungry where most she satisfies. So, in a way, Cleopatra is somebody who is like a sweet addiction, and the more you have her, the more you want it, the more you crave for her, and which is why Enobarbus tells us that Cleopatra's charm is almost fatal, and which is the reason why no other woman can actually compete with Cleopatra. So that is something. And in Egypt, Cleopatra is enraged when she hears about Antony's marriage. And yeah, on the other hand, the triumvirs make a deal with Sextus Pompey that he can retain Sicily and Sardinia, but in exchange, he will help them to get rid of the pirates. Rather, Sextus Pompey agrees to their deals, but Octavius and Lepidus break their deal and start a war against Pompey. Now, Antony returns to Alexandria, Egypt, and crowns Cleopatra and himself as rulers of Egypt and eastern third of Roman Republic, which was Antony's share as one of the triumvirs. Remember, he was one of the rulers, one of the three rulers of Rome. So he does that. He takes his share of Rome. Now, Antony was not aware about the war of Octavius and Pompey, so he accuses Octavius for not giving him his share of Sextus Pompey's land. Octavius imprisons Lepidus and it makes Antony more aggressive. Antony prepares to battle Octavius. Enobarbus suggests Antony to fight on land, but he refuses because Octavius has dared him to fight at sea. Cleopatra pledges her fleet to aid Antony. During the Battle of Actium, off the western coast of Greece, Cleopatra flees with her 60 ships. Antony follows her, leaving his own forces to ruin. On this, he felt ashamed and reproaches Cleopatra for making him a coward, but also expresses his true and deep love for her. And he says that, "Give me a kiss, even this repays me." So he is madly in love with Cleopatra, and even though he knows that he is not being the best version of himself under her charms, still he just can't rid himself of her influence. And Octavius sends a messenger to ask Cleopatra to change the side, but Cleopatra denies and agrees to fight another battle for Antony, and this time on land. On the eve of the battle, Antony's soldiers hear strange portents, interpreting as God Hercules abandoning his protection of Antony. So you see a lot of strange mishaps happen, and soldiers think that the god of strength, Hercules, has abandoned Antony, which is further sad and unfortunate. Enobarbus changes the side and meets Octavius. Antony shows generosity to Enobarbus by sending his left goods to him. Enobarbus is ashamed of his disloyalty and dies from a broken heart. Antony loses the battle as his troops are deserted in this mess, and he denounces Cleopatra, saying, "This foul Egyptian hath betrayed me." Antony resolves to kill her for the treachery. Cleopatra decides that the only way to get back Antony's love is to send him the word that she killed herself, dying with his name on her lips. She locks herself in her monument and awaits Antony's return, but the plan fails miserably, and Antony, thinking his own life is no longer worth living, stabs himself. But soon he comes to know that Cleopatra is still alive. Antony hoists up to Cleopatra's monument and dies like a hero in her arms. Octavius goes to Cleopatra asking her to surrender, but she refuses, and she says a very important and very well-known speech. The quick comedians extemporally will stage us and present our Alexandrian ravens. Antony shall be brought drunken forth, and I shall see some squeaking Cleopatra by my greatness in the posture of a whore. Cleopatra is betrayed and taken by the Romans. She claims to give her complete wealth to Octavius, but she is again betrayed by her treasurer, who claims that she is holding the treasure back. Cleopatra kills herself using the poison of an asp, imagining how she will meet Antony again in the afterlife. Her serving mates, Eris and Charmian, also kill themselves. Octavius became the first Roman emperor, but he also felt very sympathetic towards Cleopatra, and he said, "She shall be buried by her Antony, no grave upon the earth shall clip in it a pair so famous." So, in a way, Octavius kind of acknowledges their love, and Octavius orders a public military funeral, and he was later called King Augustus. And now you know the famous quotes from Antony and Cleopatra. Age cannot wither her, nor custom sail. Her infinite variety other women cloy. The appetites they feed, but she makes hungry where most she satisfies. Give me a kiss, even this repays me. This foul Egyptian hath betrayed me. The quick comedians extemporally will stage us and present our Alexandrian revels. Antony shall be brought drunken forth, and I shall see some squeaking Cleopatra, boy my greatness. But boy, actually, it's by my greatness, in the posture of a whore. The breaking of so great a thing should make a greater crack. The round world should have shook, lions into civil streets and citizens to their dens. In time we hate that which we often fear. Music, moody food of us that trade in love. Give me my robe, put on my crown, I have immortal longings in me. The stroke of death is as a lover's pitch, which hurts and is desired. Where souls do couch in flowers, we will hand in hand. So yeah, that was Antony and Cleopatra. Now we come to Coriolanus, written in 1605-1606, and it is the last tragedy of Shakespeare. The source is Thomas North's translation of Plutarch's The Lives of the Noble Grecians and Romans, written in 1579. A.C. Bradley described this play as built on the grand scale like King Lear and Macbeth. T.S. Eliot famously proclaimed Coriolanus superior to Hamlet in The Sacred Wood, in which he calls Coriolanus and Antony and Cleopatra the bard's greatest tragic achievements. Eliot also wrote a two-part poem about Coriolanus. He also alluded Coriolanus in his passage from his own The Wasteland when he wrote "Revive for a moment, a broken Coriolanus." So yeah, that is something. So what I'm thinking is that maybe I shall keep this lecture a little short. We shall only, focus on Antony and Cleopatra for this. And you should understand that the points that I have covered are sufficient for UGC NET. However, if you wish to know more about the play, more about the richness of the play, the complexity of characters, you can read it. And it's an important source material to understand contemporary literature and contemporary cinema, because a lot of cinema or a lot of books that we read actually have some semblance of Antony and Cleopatra in it, especially these star-crossed love themed books. So that is something which has been taken from Shakespeare's Antony and Cleopatra, which he has also taken from somewhere else. But the thing is, this line of inspiration keeps going on, and eventually we come to a point when we evolve the same artwork into something different, which makes it a unique piece on its own. Although the work is influenced by somewhere else, but when you start processing the work, when you make it your own, when you inculcate your own style, it gradually becomes into something unique and something special. So now Antony and Cleopatra has the touch of Shakespeare in it, although it has been taken, or it has been written under the influence of other works. So in a way, you can say that other works, Antony and Cleopatra, now has influenced a lot of works, which in turn have become unique and something to be remembered on their own. So with this note, I shall conclude my lecture. And if you liked my video, please give it a like, subscribe, and I will meet you all in the next video. Thank you.